Oh my God, guys, OctoMom is back. And don't worry, not as a patient in my practice. This time, she has a new Lifetime reality show all about her life as a mom of 14 kids, 8 of which I will remind you were octuplets. OctoMom made headlines back in 2009. So let's revisit what actually happened with her case and why it shocked the medical community. Nadia Solman became famous for giving birth to these octuplets, 8 babies all at once through IVF. Now, this wasn't just rare, it was considered highly irresponsible and unethical by fertility doctors across the board. So how did this happen? Well, with standard IVF, you're extracting a bunch of eggs, fertilizing them, turning them into embryos, and nowadays, we're typically freezing all the embryos or maybe performing a fresh transfer of a single embryo and freezing the rest. And even back then, there were limits and guidelines on how many embryos to transfer. And the reason is that there can be a very high risk of twins, triplets, and beyond if you're transferring multiple embryos. And these types of pregnancies are extremely high risk, with very high risks of miscarriage, very high risk of preterm birth, and lifelong complications for the babies. In fact, in this case, the octuplets were actually born prematurely at 31 weeks. All of them were obviously underweight. The smallest one was 1 pound, 8 ounces, and they faced initial feeding difficulties and spent tons of time in the NICU. It was miraculous that they all survived. The Beverly Hills REI, who performed the transfer in question, actually had his medical license revoked back in 2011, 2 years after it all happened. And it was for violating fertility care standards. At his hearing, he claimed that he actually recommended against it, but that the patient, OctoMom, insisted and said she would get a selective reduction if she in fact ended up being pregnant with multiples. OctoMom actually went on record recently to say that her only regret when it came to this entire ordeal was that she didn't sue the fertility doctor. I want to point out that all of the 12 embryos that she had transferred were day 3 embryos. And at that time, it was commonplace to transfer multiple day 3 embryos because it doesn't take a whole lot to get to day 3. It's getting past the day 3 point to the blastocyst stage. And so because you know there is going to be a lot of drop off, and that's the real challenge, it was normal to put back multiple to try to improve success rates. But even back in 2009, when that was more common, ASRM, this American Society for Reproductive Medicine, had guidelines in place that said no more than 2 day 3 or blastocyst stage embryos should be transferred in patients under age 38, and Nadia was 34 at the time. And they said if you were between 38 and 40, however, maybe it's permissible to put up to 3 day 3 embryos and 2 blastocysts. ASRM updated their guideline on how many embryos to transfer back in 2021, and now it's even more stringent, saying if you're under the age of 35, you should be strongly encouraged to receive only a single embryo, regardless of what stage the embryo is at. So even if it's a day 3 embryo. Day 5 embryos have much higher rates of success, which has allowed us to lower the number of embryos that are transferred across the board, lowering the risk of twins, making cases like Nadia's virtually unheard of today. Fast forward to now, 2025, and her octuplets are teenagers, and she has 14 kids in total. Because before she got pregnant with the octuplets, she already had 6 children from IVF, which is wild. Lover or hater, this is a fascinating story of medical controversy, ethics, and a tale of survival for the octuplets. I, for one, would never have agreed to this. There are many times that patients will come to me and they'll say, I really want to have twins, I'm older, I just want to be one and done, it'll be easier for me to just get this over with in one pregnancy. But when I take the time to explain the risks, I'm always able to talk them out of this. I only ever transfer more than 1 embryo in the rare instance that I'm doing a fresh embryo transfer without PGT in a patient over 38, and this is consistent with ASRM guidelines. There are really few cases where this protocol is deviated from. Over 99% of my patients are pregnant with 1 healthy baby, 1 at a time, from IVF, because we do single embryo transfers when we're using PGT normal embryos. Across the board, doesn't matter how old you are when you're doing your transfer. The success rates are so high from IVF now that all you're doing is conferring a higher risk of a high-risk pregnancy from twins when you're putting back more than 1 embryo. Nowadays, most of the twins that happen in my patients are from medications like Clomid with timed intercourse or IUI, where twin rates can vary from 3 to 8%. The bottom line is twins and triplets from IVF are slowly becoming a thing of the past. What do you think of this blast from the past? I want to know. Are you going to watch this new show? Frankly, I don't know if I have enough room or bandwidth for more bad TV after currently struggling to get through the Meghan Markle series on Netflix, but I digress. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know.